expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all of the information you need to know ahead of double game week 25. As we do with all of these Ultimate Guide videos, I'm going to go through the top players for expected points by position. I've got a view of game week 25 in isolation, which you can actually see on screen here for the goalkeepers, and then the next 5 game weeks. Because I think when you're making transfers in FPL, albeit a double game week is probably a unique scenario, most of the time when you're making transfers in FPL, you want to do so thinking 3 to 5 game weeks in mind. So in this video, I've got a view of 25 in isolation and then expected points for the next 5. All of this expected points data, by the way, comes from Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to sign up for Fantasy Football Hub yourself, there's a link, get you a discount in the description. So for goalkeepers then, no real surprise to see that the top 2 goalkeepers for expected points for 25 in isolation are Alisson and Martinez. Alisson ahead of Martinez. You know, Wolves at home, Aston Villa away. Liverpool, in my mind, a significantly better defence than Aston Villa. I'd expect Alisson to be ahead on expected points. One interesting thing, though, about Alisson, just something to think about. Obviously, the Game Week 25 deadline is a while off yet, so we have a long time to work out what's happened and decide. Kelleher started in goal against Spurs, which I don't think is a surprise. I think he is the Carabao Cup goalkeeper, but Alisson wasn't even in the squad at all. I'm not reading too much into that, but could be something to be concerned about. We'll wait and see, basically, on that one. Just bear that in mind. Martinez, Ipswich at home first up, Liverpool at home second up. I'd say that Ipswich at home is obviously his best chance of keeping a clean sheet, but he probably gets some saves points against Liverpool. Raya is in third place. Arsenal have Leicester away. I suggest that's, given the current form Leicester are in, that's a pretty good clean sheet opportunity. Leno against Forest, Henderson against Everton, Sells against Fulham, and Pickford against Crystal Palace are your top keepers for Game Week 25. Okay, for the next 5 game weeks, Alisson is still number 1, and you can see there the expected points have factored in the fact that he has a blank game week in Game Week 29. So even though he's got a blank game week in 29, he's still, I guess, got 5 fixtures over the next 5 weeks. He's the top goalkeeper. Second place, David Raya, followed by Pickford, Muric, Leno, Kepa of Bournemouth. I think he could be a pretty decent option given Bournemouth's upcoming fixtures. And then Martinez of Villa rounding off the list. Obviously, these are the top 7 goalkeepers. One player that quite surprised to see not on this list is Sells of Nottingham Forest. I would still, regardless of fixtures, which do get a little bit tougher for Forest over the next 5, I would still place Sells probably ahead of the likes of Martinez, Leno and Muric. To be honest, Ipswich, they've signed a new goalkeeper, I believe. Muric was benched for Walton in previous games. He's not going to be starting for Ipswich, in my opinion. I think he's propped up by the fact he's expected to make a lot of saves, to be honest. So yeah, I'd put Sells on this list, probably in place of Muric. All right, so same score then for defenders as we've just gone through with goalkeepers. Now, the list for Game Week 25 is dominated by the double game week defenders. And top of the list at the moment, while it's joint actually with Trent, as you can see there, is Virgil van Dijk. I think that's purely down to expected minutes. Given that Trent is currently injured, he's got a quad strain. He's possibly back, according to the press, for the Everton game, so the second fixture in Game Week 24. And I've got to say, I think he's probably quite likely to be fit for Game Week 25. However, given he has been injured, I would just think that Arne Slot might want to be a bit cautious with his minutes, particularly considering he's got someone like Connor Bradley who can just easily play in his spot. So I wouldn't expect Trent to play as many minutes as Van Dijk. But I'd still hedge that he plays 60 in both of the double would be my expectation. But Van Dijk is joint with him in terms of expected points. Konate's up there as well. I'd say Konate's probably the 3rd best Liverpool defender. And you've got Robertson and Gomez there. Robertson, probably 4th best, but I just don't think he's been playing at the level this season as we've seen from him in previous years. And I do think his minutes will be impacted by how well he plays in the form he's in, basically. Joe Gomez is there as well. He's obviously the backup centre-half. I do think Konate will play the majority of the minutes, though. Then there's a couple of Villa defenders. You've got Garcia there. And my personal pick of the Villa defenders, Luca Dean. I think he's the most attacking defender they've got. I would be a little bit concerned about his minutes, but I think when Martson has played in that fullback or wing-back position, I don't think he really has the attributes defensively. I think Luca Dean is actually a pretty decent defender as well. I just don't think Unai Emery trusts Martson fully. So Luca Dean will probably be first choice on that side. Any Villa fans, let me know in the comments what minutes you think Luca Dean's going to get. But I would still be a little bit worried about his minutes. And as well as a defender, right? You've got that Ipswich at home fixture, great. But that Liverpool at home fixture, given it's Liverpool, literally the best team in Europe at the moment, you could probably write that one off, to be honest. So really, Villa defenders, probably consider them having a single game week. Luca Dean, really the only one I'd pick. For the next 5 game weeks, we've actually got Gabriel as the #1 defender. Trent, although he has his double game week in 25, over the course of the next 5 game weeks, he still only has the 5 fixtures because he blanks in 29. So we've got Gabriel ahead, and I think that's partly down to the fixtures that they've got and potential clean sheet odds for Arsenal. Trent 2nd, Saliba 3rd, Timber 4th, Virgil van Dijk 5th, Guardiola 6th, and Konate 7th. So those are your top defenders for the next 5. And I always like to show this as well. The top defenders for the next 5 are obviously mostly premium defenders. So what we've got here is cheaper defenders. I've set a filter 5 million and below. We've got Howson, #1. Joe Gomez is up there. But again, I think that's partly propped up by the double game week and predicted minutes. I don't really think Joe Gomez is going to start all that many games. So Chalobah, Chelsea, obviously recalled from Crystal Palace. Played quite well when he's been in the team. Munol's super attacking, obviously, for Crystal Palace. Their fixtures coming up are pretty decent, but they do blank in 29. Kirkez of Bournemouth at 4.9 million. He's fantastic. Probably slightly more attacking than Howson from open play, but Howson obviously has the set-piece threat. And Bournemouth's fixtures coming up are really, really nice. I think there's a little bit of a debate to be had there if you're looking to buy a Bournemouth defender, which I think I personally am over the next few weeks, is do you go for Howson, save the cash, or do you go for Kirkez, spend a bit more, but probably have... I know the expected points have Howson edging it, but I do think Kirkez long-term is probably a better option just because, well, in terms of points he will score, it's just whether it's worth the price difference, just because he's a fullback, which is naturally a more attacking position. But anyway, these are your top defenders, cheap defenders for the next 5. Midfielders then, again, list totally dominated by Aston Villa and Liverpool players with their double. Salah, absolute #1 by an absolute massive margin. No surprise there. Luis Diaz 2nd, Szoboszlai 3rd, quietly becoming quite a reasonable FPL pick, I think, Szoboszlai. And, you know, I think most people watching this video right now already have 3 Liverpool assets because, of course, they doubled in 24. But if you want to take a punt, his ownership, he could be a pretty nice option. But, of course, he does take up a 3rd Liverpool spot. Morgan Rogers, Tielemans, both from Villa. I'd say their minutes will probably be quite decent over the double, particularly Tielemans' minutes, but obviously he's a little bit less appealing as an option than Rogers is. And with Morgan Rogers, 3 games in a row in the Premier League, 3 1-pointers where he's blanked, not really put up any real attacking threat at all, and picked up stupid yellow cards. I've not been too impressed with Rogers' recent performance in the Premier League. Obviously scored a hat-trick in the Champions League, but he don't score any points in FPL for hat-tricks in the Champions League, unfortunately. And with the signings that Villa have made this window, Donyell Malen, Marco Asensio, Marcus Rashford, I think minutes across that entire Villa front line could be threatened. So, and obviously the second fixture is against Liverpool. I don't think that Liverpool fixture for Villa attackers is a complete write-off, but it's obviously the toughest fixture you can get. I guess it's at Villa Park, which kind of pushes it down a little bit. Yeah, I'm a little bit unsure on Rogers. I think if you have him, you definitely keep him, but I'd question whether if you're looking to bring him in for game week, if you're looking to bring him in for game week 25, should you bring in a Bournemouth asset instead that have Southampton? That's a question I would pose to you. For the next 5 game weeks then, Salah top, Palmer 2nd, Son 3rd, Mbeumo 4th, Foden 5th, Odegaard 6th, and Semenyo of Bournemouth 7th. So interestingly, the point I just raised about Rogers, well, actually, I'll move on to cheap midfielders because we've got cheap midfielders as well. Rogers doesn't even make the top 7 midfielders over the next 5 game weeks. Semenyo's #1, Ahmad's #2, Ouattara 3, Madueke 4, Kulusevski 5, Kluivert 6, Szoboszlai 7, right? So yeah, Rogers doesn't make the list for the next 5 game weeks, and it's just whether you're willing to hedge against a double game week, pick someone like Semenyo or Kluivert instead. I actually personally, I'd say Kluivert is my favourite Bournemouth midfielder just because he's on penalties, and I actually have Semenyo in my team currently. I don't think I can justify swapping between the two, so I'm just going to stick with Semenyo. But I do think, just in terms of Rodgers, to try and not get too, I don't know, too excited about the double game week that he has. Ipswich is obviously a really good game, but then Liverpool, not so much. Rodgers' form in the Premier League has not been great recently, and I think you could genuinely take him on with someone like Semenyo or Kluivert when they play Southampton, comfortably the worst team in the league, I think, this season, and a great set of fixtures afterwards. And their minutes, you've got to think, are pretty safe. Whereas Rodgers, like I said, with all those other Villa attacking assets, I would be a little bit worried about his minutes. I'm just looking on this list and if there's any other players I'd really pick. For me, amongst the cheap midfielders at the moment, the ones to go for are really Semenyo, Ouattara and Kluivert. And it's just a question of, do you go for Rodgers with the double game week, or do you look a bit longer term, maybe take the hit in game week 25, although Southampton versus Ipswich and Liverpool in a double is pretty close, I think. That's the decision that there is to make this week, I think. Forwards then, no surprise, the two centre forwards for Liverpool and Aston Villa 1 and 2. Watkins currently nursing a little bit of an injury at the moment. I think we'll probably get some decent news as to his fitness before the game week 25 deadline. And I think the Fantasy Football Hub expected points are factoring that in slightly. I don't know. I think if Watkins was fully fit and predicted to play the same minutes as Gakpo, I'd have them relatively level for expected points, just because Watkins is on penalties. But to be fair, the Liverpool fixtures are better, I think, than the Villa ones. So yeah, Gakpo number 1, Watkins number 2, Haaland number 3, Newcastle at home, Isak number 4, Man City away. I'd actually say, and there's a big debate really, isn't there, to be had for game week 25, it's how much better is Watkins than Isak for game week 25, and is it worth making a transfer between the two of them? Obviously, Isak's 60% owned in the game at the moment, so people will have a big decision like that to make. I would probably be very cautious, to be honest, about transferring Isak out for Watkins. I think Man City, they might be good or decent from a goal scoring perspective, but defensively they've looked absolutely terrible this season, and I don't think any of the new signings they've made, maybe the new CDM that's come in from Porto, might change things, but I don't think he will sort of first, second game back. I think Man City are genuinely a team to target, so I'd be really hard pressed to sell Isak for Watkins personally. And I think if I were to bring Watkins in, it would be for another striker. I'd be hesitant to do it for Isak, is my kind of narrative. Havertz, Mateta and Wissa are your other top forwards. And then a quick forecast at the next 5 weeks. I've put Isak as the picture there because I think he's being underrated by this Fantasy Football Hub algorithm. I really do. It's obviously due to the fact that he's got a blank game week in 29. That's kind of pushing him down the ranks a little bit. But I do still think over the next... You're not going to sell him, I don't think, in game week 25 because he has a blank in 29. And to be honest, for game week 29, you're probably going to want to bench him. You're not really going to want to get rid of Isak. So I'd still have him as probably my favourite forward in the game right now. Haaland is top for expected points. I had him in my team right up until game week 23 when I finally sold him. And my God, it was a massive relief. I just think he's too expensive. He might be up there for expected points, but in reality, you're rarely, well, if ever, going to want to captain him ahead of Salah. And when you're spending 14.7 million on a player, it's just not worth it. Havertz in second. I think he will knock in a fair few goals, but I don't want to pick Kai Havertz in my team. Cunha, Wolves fixtures, I believe, do turn in future game weeks. He's signed a new contract. Probably their penalty taker. In good form, I think he could be obviously a really nice option. Cody Gakpo. It's just a question of how long do you want to keep him in your team after double game week 25. He's got Man City in 26. But again, like I said, Man City is almost a team to target in my mind. It's just at what point do you offload him for another striker? And then Wissa and Wood rounding off the list. I've got a bit of a benching headache myself. I'm just going to introduce my benching headache. I've got to bench one of Chris Wood, Mbeumo and a Bournemouth asset this week going into game week 25. And I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to play it. Chris Wood scored a hat-trick, obviously, in game week 24. And he is probably a player I'm considering benching against Fulham. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you do with that benching headache. All right, I don't have the usual 11-5 clean sheet odds on this video because they're just not ready yet. I'm recording this literally the morning after the Carabao Cup game between Liverpool and Spurs, so there's not much time to update these. But what I do have is projected clean sheets from Fantasy Football Hub. I thought this would still be a useful metric to share in terms of clean sheet projections. So rather than a percentage figure that you would usually see in my clean sheet odds, we've got a number. So Liverpool, it's how many clean sheets they're projected to get in the game week, basically. And if it's a single game week fixture, you can kind of convert that into a percentage. But with a double, it might be a little bit harder. If there's any math geeks in the comments, please let me know if my maths logic here is wrong. But over the double game week, Liverpool are projected to keep 0.9 clean sheets, which I think is basically saying they're 90% likely to keep 1 clean sheet. Aston Villa, 0.6, so they're 60% likely to keep 1 clean sheet. But that's quite hard to derive into 2 mutually exclusive scenarios of 2 games. I'm trying not to sound like I don't really know about statistics, but hopefully what I'm saying there makes sense. Arsenal, 0.4, Crystal Palace, 0.4, Fulham, 0.4, so they're all around 40% to keep a clean sheet. Interesting to see Fulham higher than Nottingham Forest for clean sheet projections, though. Just interesting observation. Bournemouth, Forest, Man City, Spurs and West Ham all around 30%, 0.3 clean sheets this week. I usually say anything below 30%, or in this case 0.3 clean sheets, I'd be hesitant starting defenders on, which is basically the entire right-hand side of the screen. So Chelsea, Brighton, Everton, Newcastle, Brentford, Southampton, Man United, Ipswich, Leicester, Wolves. Probably hesitant to start defenders from those teams this week. Captaincy, I've got to say, it's a pretty easy one this week, isn't it? I've got a view here of Fantasy Football Hub and FPL Review. Interesting to see FPL Review rating Rashford as a pickable asset. I just don't think we haven't seen anything from Rashford yet in a Villa shirt. I don't think he's been very good for Man United this season. Personally, my honest opinion, I don't think there's any justification to pick Rashford in FPL right now. I think it's a real risk if you do, because I don't even know if he's going to start at the moment in that Villa team. Salah is by far and away the clear captain for me. I would advise against going against him as your captain, to be honest. You know, Wolves and Aston Villa in a double game week. I'd actually argue, if you haven't deployed your triple captain and don't have a chip active yet, that game week 25, with the 2 fixtures they have in 25, again, Wolves and Villa is better than the 24 double, in my mind, of Bournemouth and Everton. So, yeah, I think Salah, by far and away, the best captain. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Some expected points data, clean sheet odds stuff, and, yeah, who I think is the best captain, although captaincy, like I said, really easy this week. I think that's everything. Let me know in the comments if there's any players I missed out in this video. Sorry, I feel like I've been sitting quite low in my camera in this video. We'll work on that for the next one. I think that's everything. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel. Should be, make sure I point in the right place, just about there on the screen. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.